And so let's start looking at the packaging. We'll grab a node from back here. So let's start with a histogram scan. We'll grab this blur node, reuse this blur node here. Just to get a little bit of this shape. Actually, we need a bit more blur, I think. No, let's just use this. We'll move it down here so we can work in a free space down here. So I want to create these little, I don't know what they're called, but some kind of edging that makes it easier to tear it up. So we'll start by this. We'll run this through a blur. Set this to 2. And I'm going to create a tile sampler here. So essentially, like, this is the base of our packaging, and we want to add these shapes up top and on the bottom as well. So let's start with a shape. Yes, make it a little bit smaller. And something like that. And make another shape. And then we just rotate this 145. And I want to combine these two together. And use the safe transform just to double click this, select this, do a Y offset. I'm going to make it end up so it sticks on that edge there. Tiny bit smaller. It's not going to really matter, but we can see if we can. Just dial it in. Perfect. I'm going to do a mirror grayscale so we get both top and bottom. Like so. And we'll plug that in here. Set this one to pattern input again. And now we need like a whole bunch more of these. This is something I just tested out before. And I think this was 185. That looks crazy here, but we're going to create a mask. So we're going to take this guy, create a normal out of this, and set this to 10 or something. And then we're going to do, we're going to grab the green channel, the top and bottom. So we're going to do this RGBA split and get the green channel and run through a curve node. I'm going to make it a V shape like this. So now essentially we have mask for where top and bottom is. I'm going to put that in mask input. And then go all the way down to the bottom. And just dial this in. That was good already. And now we can take this and add a blend node and combine it with this. It would be nice to get a bit more to get it to line up there. We can see if this thing matters here. There. Just change that value to a little bit lower. And we do have a little bit of a gap here. So we can either do a histogram scan, or we can probably just make these a little bit wider. Okay, that looks good. Let's see here. So first we want to take the part without this jagged edge, this part, and like sort of inflate that shape. So we'll start with that. So we'll take actually this thing here, and we can run this through a non-uniform blur and hook it up to both inputs. And we can set this to 7.5. Crank up these guys. So now we have a packaging that is a little bit round on this side, a little bit flatter here. And we can do the same with this guy. And set this one to something kind of low. You can try the angle from above. But essentially when we have these two guys, we'll combine these with a height blend. And we just set this one to 1, and this one we just crank down to, let's say, 35. And let's hook this one up to here so we can look at just the packaging. I'm just gonna crank this down to 0. Yeah, that looks weird right now, but it's once we get the other elements on, it's gonna look a lot better. Let's preview that still. Next step is to just warp this a bit. It's kind of like very perfect and straight edges. So I want to grab a Perlin noise, set it to something like 7. And that's way too much, but we can do maybe half of that or a little bit less. And then I'm going to create that torn edge on it. So we're going to reuse our mask we used to cut away the chocolate. So I'm gonna just grab this guy like this. And we're just gonna blend that on top of this. Use subtract. But here we can actually scale this one up. Something like that, and we run that through a histogram scan, because we don't want like a soft edge, we want like a very crisp edge on that. Just a little bit of feathering on that edge, so not all the way up to 1. Like that. Don't forget to save. And now we're going to look at just combining these two. So we're going to take our chocolate here and use a non-uniform blur. And we will take our this whole thing here and shove up here. And I think we up our samples. I'm going to set this one to a little bit higher. Using this setting here, set it to 0.5, we get some of these bumps through the packaging. And then we add a blend here. And we also add this on top. But we set this to something kind of low, just so we get this edging back here. Yeah, something like that. The packaging itself is a bit lackluster, so let's try to add some kind of like folds and stuff onto it. So we can take this part here, put a blend node. And we can reuse this Perlin noise here. We'll put a slope blur into both of these. And we lower our samples to 1. We can crank up our intensity to max. I think we just also need to blur this because some of this detail is pretty sharp, but we can see what it looks like. A bit less. Yeah, we're getting some of that over there. Let's just blur it, soften it a bit. I think that looks alright. A little more visual interest, I can catch the light. And that's pretty much our height completed. What we could do here now is just add another output. So let's just clone one of these. We'll clone this height. And we set this one to opacity. Copy this. Paste it here. We can make it all nice. Like that. And then we hook this one up. Actually, we hook this one up here. We do a histogram scan. Set this one to 1 and 1, or dial this one back a bit so we just get a little bit of cut off there. Maybe that's too much. Yeah, that's alright. And we can just right click anywhere in the graph and say view outputs in 3D view. So now it's using our opacity mask. Let's go back to this one and see. Can like modify the thickness of the packaging there, and you can go back in and adjust like where and how it's torn off. Looks pretty good where it was.